Hello and welcome to the Unlucky Frog Gaming Podcast. I'm your host, Ben Porter, and I'm joined this Independence Day by Matt Coward from the University of York's Sociology Department. Did I get it right?
Yeah, that's absolutely great. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. How's yourself?
Yes, not too bad, thank you. Ready for, what tomorrow brings after Independence Day. No one knows.
Yeah, well, it didn't end well for us, did it?
No, not really. Not at all.
But this Independence Day can. So
Fingers
there
crossed.
we go.
There's always hope.
I mean, I'm biased, but I would say that I prefer this Independence Day to the American one. Apologies to all our American listeners, but
I've got to agree with you there, but I don't want to. I don't want to turn this into a politics show. So maybe we'd best push back that.
yeah, another time maybe. So our listeners are probably wondering why we've got the sociology department for the University of York on the show. So would you like to explain what it is in particular you're doing at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So before I was a sociologist, I was a gamer. Shock horror. I started gaming kind of many moons ago, and I decided to combine my love of writing and love of research with love of gaming. So I'm currently doing my PhD at the University of York in their Department of Sociology, and I'm doing an ethnographic study of tabletop gaming, which is kind of about going out and speaking to people in the community and finding out what exactly is tabletop gaming in the UK today.
It sounds very impressive, I must say. But we'll look into your research project a little bit later in the podcast. But first of all, let's talk a bit more about Matt Coward, the gamer. You mentioned just there that you've been into tabletop gaming for a while. So why don't you tell us where your love affair with tabletop gaming began?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting one because for me, tabletop gaming actually began in kind of quite heavy pen and paper role playing games. When I started senior school, about 11 years old, my history teacher was a role player and a Warhammer player, and he had this homebrewed RPG system that he'd been working on for the past 25 years. And we created characters for that world, me and a group of our friends. He ran it for us once a week, and we had all kinds of adventures. And the beautiful thing about that role-playing world is you live on. So even as I've gone away, my character still lives in his world. Like the last time I saw my character, I was rolled up and tied in a carpet, rolling down a hill towards a river. So I might be dead in that world. I don't know, but I'm not. Yeah. So kind of from there, I went into minigaming, and then kind of full circle back mainly towards board gaming. I still do some pen and paper role playing game, not as much as I want to, but yeah, for me, it's kind of it's mainly about the board games now.
Sure. So you're a board gamer. We've now established that. Play some of the tabletop RPGs. What prompted you to do a study on the wider board gaming community?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one because for me, they tell you always to research what you know. And I know about games. I really enjoy playing games. I am what we might call in academia an insider in the community. So I don't need to go and get in there before I can get started. And I think for me, tabletop games just have this amazing way of bringing people together and kind of fostering kind of communities online and in person, and they're just there's something really interesting about that for me, about the way we can form relationships within gaming and external to gaming with gamers, and kind of what that says about gamers as people, and what that then can speak back to kind of wider society. It's kind of going to end up saying what tabletop gaming is doing really well that everyone else could be better at.
So obviously, a sociological perspective it is of interest to your department?
Yeah, there's a big push of kind of sociology of it kind of falls into kind of cultural sociology, community studies, that kind of area. So it is valuable because of the nature of it being a growing community. Like we've seen a massive rise over the past decade in tabletop gaming.
Uh-huh.
We're seeing lots of new games coming out. Some people might say too many, some people might say not enough, but it's absolutely fantastic. And to see kind of the love and passion that people have for these games, especially in the UK, because we're not a front runner in kind of the number of games we release per year in comparison to places like the United States or Central Europe. But we have a very distinctive community in the UK, I think, that sits a little bit differently to tabletop gaming in the rest of the world.
What do you think it is that makes the UK tabletop community stand out from the rest?
Oh, that's an interesting one. It's very holistic. It's very holistic,
Okay.
and I'm not sure. I'm not quite rooted out why I think that is yet, but it's amazing to go to events and see people just wanting to get stuck in. Kind of, there's no. I've seen very little kind of belittling, very little even like anger. Everyone is just very happy, very pleasant, very jovial. They're enjoying themselves and they're engaging in kind of in this digital age a form of kind of leisure and recreation kind of play that isn't as traditional as we might see it now.
Uh-huh. So given your position as a researcher, you're perhaps paying a little bit more attention to trends and habits within the culture than some of the rest of us are. Let's hope so. Anyway, right?
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, but what in particular do you attribute the rise of the popularity of tabletop gaming in recent years?
Yeah, I think crowdfunding has had a big impact on the industry. Crowdfunding has taken it from those large scale producers to anyone. Anyone can go out and they can create a game and they can play test it and they can get it to a point and say, right, I want to produce this. I was watching Aaron Dean's documentary the other day, and it was saying kind of the way in which the Kickstarter industry has allowed the growth of tabletop gaming is because even if only 500 people across the world want to play a certain game, they now have the ability to. 500 copies can be a pretty healthy print run for a Kickstarter game that wouldn't hit kind of the large scales of mass manufacture from what we see from like Hasbro and games like that, kind of K-10 Studios.
Yeah, particularly I think if you're just one guy, you can now do that, whereas beforehand, like you say, and this I suppose applies to Kickstarter in the broader sense, be that for video games, tech, whatever, is that one guy or girl who has one very niche idea can pitch that to the internet, and then all of the people to whom this very niche idea appeals, who are spread out across the globe, can form their own little community, get together and say, yeah, we're going to play this. It doesn't have to go to one of the big dogs like Hasbro or people like that anymore.
No, absolutely, and it's great to see kind of these smaller runs, and then for games of all shapes and sizes. Like we still on Kickstarter, we get huge hitters like Cool Mini or Not, Zombicide in Space, whatever they're doing now, I forgot.
Yeah.
Down to kind of these small, tiny box games that are only a few cards but are so intuitive in their play. I backed one that's just finished called Crypt. It looks absolutely fascinating. It's just it was a £9 game of grave robbing. What more could you want?
I don't know what more I could want. All the fun of Birkenhair on the tabletop.
Absolutely.
In one pack of cards, there you go.
All the fun without the corporal punishment as well. That makes it more appealing.
And you don't actually have to touch corpses.
Yeah, yeah, that is a bad thing, isn't it? Or is it?
I think so. I mean, I can't really, having never touched a corpse, I can't really answer that question. But
Well, my other area of research interest is death. I write a lot on death and gaming and death and play and how they interact. So I'm quite interested about how we look and think and talk about death within the settings of games as well, which is really interesting. There's a couple of games at the moment that are doing that quite well and kind of really starting conversations about that, like This War of Mine that came out last year on tabletop, based on the PC game that came out a few years back, and the kind of beautiful, intricate narrative in their book of stories that provides so many kind of interesting opportunities for like reflection and the chance to think a bit deeper about the situations in kind of war and sieges, etc.
well, if you want a game to play that makes the players want to die, I can recommend playing Zombies.
Okay, is that one in a good way or a bad way?
In a bad way. It is a horrendous experience. I take it you've never played it?
No, I haven't had the displeasure, it seems.
Right. Okay. Well, you're not missing much. We played it one morning. I say one morning. I think it was about 3 a.m. because we'd stayed up all night playing games, and yeah, we got to this point where we were just like, will this ever end?
Yeah.
It was torturous.
Yeah. It's one of those things, though. You see, like the massive fads as well. Kind of, I was looking at my shelf the other day because with UKGE coming up, I was like, oh, what am I going to take to the Bring and Buy? And I was there and I was looking and I was like, I've got a lot of Cthulhu. There's only so much Cthulhu that one man can have, and maybe some of this Cthulhu to be parted. And it's the same kind of. We had a spate of zombie games about two and a bit years ago as well, didn't we? Around the time Dead of Winter came out.
And although they were all sort of jumping on the bandwagon for that trend, there's a huge variance in quality there.
Yeah.
But it was interesting you saying about Cthulhu, because Josh and myself were having a conversation about this the other night. I love Lovecraft, okay? Like I've got the big collector's edition Necronomicon on my shelf with all the collected stories.
Yeah.
I am a huge fan of the Arkham Horror living card game.
Yeah.
I'm currently playing through the Dunwich cycle, and I love it. It's fast becoming one of my favourite games of all time. But one of the things we were talking about was how there's so much Lovecraft out there at the moment. And a lot of it's not very good, it has to be said. But it's like you say, that people are obviously realising it's popular, and they're tacking that theme on there. Because the same could be said about A Song of Ice and Fire, that series of books, because it's medieval fantasy. It doesn't really stand out in terms of if you just describe the world, the setting to someone, you just be like, okay, that sounds pretty generic. But I think where it stands out is in the way that it's told. And I say that to say that I think that's where games like the Arkham Horror living card game, or used example of Dead of Winter, which I've not played but I've heard very good things about, is they take something that's been done to death, but they tell it in an interesting way.
And I think that's interesting. There's something there between kind of the narrative of it and what you can take from the story. Because I enjoy the Arkham Horror living card game a lot as well, because you can add your own story onto it. But sometimes you play a game and it feels very tacked on. It's like Cthulhu's got Velcro on the back, and he could be easily replaced with a part, or he could be replaced with a zombie, or he could be replaced with I don't know what the next fad might be, a fire truck, whatever. It's kind of they can just be put on. It's like Multi-Universum. I really enjoy Multi-Universum as a game. I think it works really well. It's snappy, it's quick, it's simple with a lot of strategy. They brought out a Project Cthulhu expansion. Why? You've created all this beautiful bespoke art of all these strange and interesting worlds for this game of kind of onion-headed men and women roaming through with carrying spears and stuff like that. And it's just it's already weird fiction that you don't need to then bring out an expansion that has kind of the Godfather of weird fiction in it as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of the tacked on stuff at the moment. I think there's actually a Pandemic Cthulhu. I've not played it, so I don't know whether it's any good or not, but that one struck me as do we need Pandemic Cthulhu? But
I think it does something quite interesting. It's beautiful looking as well. I painted my set, which is rare for me because I usually don't paint at all. But the way it's set up, you almost have this almost Ouija board layout of elder gods at the top that add different effects that come up during what would be
okay.
during play, and it adds something new. And I think a lot of the because this pandemic, everything now, isn't there?
Yeah.
Pandemic. There's Rising Tide, and there's Iberia. And there's obviously the In the Labs expansions and the original Pandemic and the Legacies.
Yeah, it's big.
Yeah,
It's big.
I am expecting kind of a My First Pandemic announcement soon, because the other thing I'm seeing a lot of at the moment is kids' versions of games. My First Scythe, My First Stone Age are coming out and things like that. So if we get a My First Pandemic, you heard it here first.
There you go. Matt Coward ahead of the curve. So going back to your research, what does the day-to-day application of your research look like?
It's quite interesting. I take what we call in sociology as an interpretivist approach, which means, like, unlike a scientist who'll create hypotheses about what they believe will happen or what they believe is the case, and will try and prove them or disprove them. I go in and collect the data and then see what comes up from it. So I'm trying not to add my inherent biases on that. So for me, I think things that are really coming out for me at the moment are kind of community membership, really interested in kind of bespoke production and this idea of people inside the industry making things for other people inside the industry, and the kind of cyclical nature of kind of not only crowdfunding but also kind of media producers, even like yourselves, and even people like funding gaming spaces and board game cafes around the country. So at the moment, it's kind of toying through that, and just trying to talk to as many different people as possible, trying to get as many different opinions to try and get that representation of tabletop gaming in the UK. Like, I am as average in terms of a participant to a study you will ever see. I am a 20-something, bearded, overweight white man. I'm so average. It's unbelievable. But it's kind of trying to make sure that all voices are being heard. And as such, I'm encouraging anyone. I don't mind what your opinion on tabletop gaming is whatsoever. I'd just like to hear it.
Yeah, it's more, that's quite an interesting thing. Like you say, it's not so much about you necessarily wading in and trying to offer a different perspective. In a lot of ways, you're doing the opposite of what we're doing, where we're basically wading in and going, this is our opinion, this is what we think on this thing, whereas you're standing back and writing everything that happens down.
Yeah, that's it. I'm very happy like that. It's great because for data collection, like, I don't know any other academics currently that could say that their data collection is going and meeting great new people at conventions or at game days and just sitting down and playing games with them and having a chat. I don't do these formal interviews. I prefer much kind of like a conversational approach, much like what we're doing now. Just seeing where the conversation goes.
Absolutely.
Because it'll inevitably go to where we're interested in.
Yeah. So you mentioned conventions there, and from what I've understood from when we've briefly spoken prior to doing the interview today, attending conventions is a big part of what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of the gaming festivals, aren't they? In a way, they're the big events in the calendar year of tabletop gaming. So they're really important. I've gone to a couple already. I've got a few more planned for the rest of this year. I was at AirCon earlier this year, and then we met up at Compulsion in Edinburgh. And then I've got Tabletop Scotland in September, which I'm really looking forward to, actually. I think it's going to be really nice to see a convention in its first year and just see what's happening up there. I think it'll be really good.
Uh,
And then a couple more that I'm not. I want to go to more than I can, I think, is where I'm at the moment.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think 7 conventions a year is a bit much for anyone. But
It sounds like a challenge to me.
well, that's what we like. We're all about challenging ourselves and self-improvement through gaming, which is another fantastic aspect of gaming. Is what it does for people, the players, confidence and problem-solving abilities, and kind of the whole educational value of tabletop gaming as well, is a huge other area that my work doesn't even really touch on. But it's there and it's clear to see, and there's so much evidence that says, yeah, actually, playing games helps people learn.
Oh, definitely. I think so. It's something that I would like to see being rolled out in schools a bit more. I don't know. I imagine someone somewhere has plans to do something like that, but I dare say that it has, especially I think in the development of kids and young adults. I think it has tremendous value, or even to be honest, I imagine in like prisons, rehabilitation facilities and things like that as well.
There's a colleague in Ireland, Republic of Ireland, actually, who's doing some work on the use of board gaming in prisons at the moment, but I'm not 100% sure if she has started that yet. I haven't spoken to her in quite a while, but I'll have to find out if she's managed to make a start of that yet, and I'll let you know.
That sounds very interesting. Yeah, I'd be quite interested in speaking to her actually, because that's a whole other level of consideration, because there's certain game components that you wouldn't be allowed to have there as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And then it becomes what's the aim of the game within a prison setting? So what's the purpose of the game? Because obviously, what my personal opinion would be is that actually what we should be doing is using cooperative games as team building exercises and kind of things like that. And so different games offer different values to different people, I think. And that's, again, something that's really powerful with tabletop gaming, is there is something for everyone.
Definitely. So we've talked quite a bit about the application of board gaming in a positive sense in terms of community and things like that. But when you spend as much time as you have observing these communities, you must surely become aware of like negative trends and some not so constructive behavior. Is there anything within your research that you've noticed about board gaming communities that you think has to change?
I think there's something coming up that's really quite interesting. I think there's two things actually. One is very positive, that within convention settings I've seen next to no unwanted behavior. And I think that not only is very good for the community, on the community, but it also just shows how well managed and how well organised these events are, and the time and effort that a predominantly kind of volunteer workforce put in to make these things happen. It's wonderful to see. I think a lot of it that's coming up for me, though, is this idea of kind of widening participation in tabletop gaming. You know, we've all got this stereotypical image of a gamer, kind of lurks around in the media, which is the same as kind of general like geek culture in double speech marks that I'm doing that you can't see. It's this stereotypical figure of, oh, what is a gamer? Oh, well, a gamer is a white bloke of a certain age that's probably...
Yeah, the neckbeard type of thing, isn't it?
You know, so many people have said neckbeard, and it's made me really conscious that my beard goes down my neck, and that's kind of worrying.
Oh, Matt, that wasn't directed at you.
I don't know. I hope I'm not.
I think the neckbeard is supposed to imply slovenliness of appearance more than anything else. So I don't think you fall into the neckbeard category. I wouldn't worry about that.
But I think what's quite interesting is speaking to a lot of different people. It's this idea that they're all very conscious of trying to engage with other communities to bring them into tabletop gaming, like Black communities and LGBT communities and working with disabled individuals to make board games more accessible for them.
Mhm.
But I think a lot of what I've discovered is that although there's the want and the passion and the drive to kind of do that, it's just almost like they're not quite equipped with the how do you phrase that? It's kind of like it's not the correct terminology, just not quite enough understanding of these communities to be able to properly engage with them.
There's maybe a combination of a lack of understanding and tact, perhaps.
Yeah, and I think that is it's like I was speaking to someone quite a while back, and they were talking about a trans individual, and they misgendered them when they were talking about them, and that's kind of off-putting for individuals to be misgendered. It makes them feel uncomfortable, and it's just that recognition of recognition that actually, I can make this person feel more welcome if I adopt this gender pronoun to speak to them, for example, or when speaking with them. And it's just things like that. I don't think there's no malice in it whatsoever. It's just it's just that lack of knowledge. But you can only get that knowledge from active engagement with the community. So it's kind of a six of one, half a dozen of the other, really.
And I think it's maybe worth saying there for anyone from whatever demographic you happen to be, something offensive, more often than not, it's coming from a place of ignorance rather than malice.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you there. And just to kind of follow that up, I think something also that works really well is when you do speak to these people about these issues, and you do kind of maybe not pull them up on it, but just, kind of mention, you could say this instead. This is a better way of approaching that topic. They're really accepting of it, and they want to know. And I think somewhere in there, and I've got no evidence to prove this at all, but we read that many rule books for that many complex games. We're so used to getting rules wrong that we're happy to accept someone correcting us. And that's what it feels like for me, anyway.
That's a great way of saying it, I think. I've actually been pulled up for misgendering someone before, and I was quietly corrected, and then we moved on from there. And I just apologized because it was a genuine mistake, because it's a very human thing to just make assumptions about someone based on appearance. And I don't think there's any malice in that. And I think that I think everyone needs to take a step towards the middle when it comes to educating people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is something actually that American conventions do a lot better than we do, with kind of the lanyards, with the banners, the banner stickers that go on the bottom of the lanyards. Of kind of, you get ones like Heavy Cardboard have one, and Gamer Pride for LGBT gamers, and I've seen them there just with kind of pronoun markers. So, hi, I'm Matt. I use he, him. They're my pronouns. But normalizing that, so the people that maybe don't have a pronoun that was their birth gender is there, it makes everyone feel less awkward. You know where you stand with that. You know how to speak to them, and it's little things like that. But I think, as we've been saying, no malice whatsoever. From what I've seen, I can only stress that enough. And if anyone has had experiences like that they feel comfortable talking about, it'd be great to speak to you. But I think there's the community's really trying to engage with those, a diverse range of communities, and trying to kind of make gaming a equal, wholesome, family-friendly environment.
Yeah, and like you say, perhaps it's been done a little bit clumsily, but I feel like it is important to stress here that that most of that isn't done out of malice.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because I have seen like some people on Twitter and things like that reacting quite badly to similar misunderstandings and situations, and I feel like if a little bit of tolerance was exercised on both sides, I dare say it would diffuse a lot of such situations.
Well, it's the same. We see it within the context of games as well. It's kind of, how can we expect these communities who want to engage with tabletop games to play games where there's no representation of them. It's kind of the big thing at the moment about kind of the lack of women in any form of ethnic diversity in a lot of card games and board games themselves, in players and characters, etc. Like one, I can't remember which company on Kickstarter it was, but they made having a female playable character a stretch goal. And
what is that?
It's not a stretch goal. Like, is it really that? Like, you have 4 base characters there that all have 4 very distinctive artwork. Could you not have just made one of those a woman, or could you not have just put the stretch goal woman in there and made one of the extra men a stretch goal? It's silly things like that. And I think a lot of the time, again, I don't think it's coming from a bad place. I think it's just coming from maybe we've not thought about this enough. Maybe we just need to think this through a touch more.
So the female characters was something I will admit I used to grumble about a bit, like, why is this such a big deal? But then when I sat down and thought about it from what my perspective would be if I was that person, I really immerse myself in the story of a game, so that when I play a game, I view my character as my avatar. It's almost like a little extension of myself. So more often than not, I will play a male character when I play an MMO or something like that, and then like I'll loosely maybe base them on my appearance or whatever. So when I thought about it that way, that for everyone else, it's not just me that sees these characters as an extension of myself. So it is important to have characters that are relatable to other people, so that they can engage in the same way that I can. And when I thought about it from that perspective, I was like, right, okay, I don't have any problem with that then. I can't begrudge someone wanting to engage in a game in the same way that I like to engage with it.
And that's the thing. And then it's not just equality within the community, it's equality in the gameplay itself. It's great. It's just getting to that point where everyone is on an equal and level footing, and everyone is receiving the same amount of enjoyment from a game as possible, and all feel kind of comfortable in the environment they're playing in. It's just what we want, and that's not to say I'm in no way saying that tabletop gaming is a bad environment. It's great. It's very good, but it could be even better.
Yeah, I think so. So I feel like we may have already touched upon this, but is there a desired outcome for this research that you're undertaking?
In what kind of way?
Obviously, you get a qualification at the end of this, but from the sociological perspective, what would you like to see come from your research?
Well, what I'm doing at the moment, so I'm planning on doing field work until February next year, and then what I'd like to do is spend another year going around conventions, hopefully doing kind of seminars and talks and chatting with people, and actually sitting down and saying, this is what I've found, this is what I think about it, and what do you think about it? And open it back up. I want it to be kind of a continuing dialogue. I don't just want to go in and get my data and then run away like a goblin in a corner and read it. It's that kind of feeding back. And I think at the end of it, I obviously will have to produce a thesis, and I'll probably make that into a book. But I also want to speak that back to the community. And if I can produce a guide of some form, or kind of a short book that talks about tabletop gaming in the UK and gives a bit of context to it, and gives some kind of top 10 tips of being an inclusive gamer and things like that, I think that'd be perfect for me. If my research can lead to anyone having a positive experience in tabletop gaming, that's what I want to see.
I think that was quite eloquently put.
Because I feel like I'm waffling on.
No, I think that, just wanting everyone to have a positive experience in tabletop gaming. What more could anyone want?
Yeah, no, absolutely, and it's that's the thing. I'm a gamer before I'm a sociologist, and I'm passionate about that. And like gaming has done. I met my now fiance playing games. Our relationship blossomed through playing games together. The first game we bought together was Dead of Winter. It's still in our collection. It's kind of that thing. We have a like we're playing a lot of Azul together at the moment, and that's our thing. We play games with other people as well, but that's how we spend our leisure time.
Yeah. Well, there we go.
So.
Yeah, we covered a lot of ground there, I feel like.
Bit of a whistle-stop tour.
No, that was good. I really enjoyed that. Matt, thank you very much for coming on the show.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
I dare say we'll be hearing from you in the future.
Hopefully.
Don't be a stranger. And for all of our listeners, wherever you are, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Hi everyone, it's Charlotte from the Unlucky Frog Gaming Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Now be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. All you need to do is search Unlucky Frog Gaming. You can also show your support for the Unlucky Frog through Patreon. To find out more information, check out our website www.unluckyfrog.com. Thanks, bye!